Hi guys, welcome. If you're watching this tutorial, you've obviously just received your lucky dip box and seen that this month your surprise DIY is a crochet amigurumi jellyfish. If you haven't crocheted before, then I really recommend that you watch this video from start to finish alongside with your handout before starting. Before we crack on, I thought it'd be useful for you to see how the jellyfish is crocheted. So in amigurumi, we crochet all the body parts individually. So here we have the straight tentacles. We then have the curly tentacles, the base of the jellyfish, and that's the head, which is slightly off screen now. Sorry about that, guys. But that's the head of the jellyfish. And these are all the different parts that we'll sew together to make the jellyfish complete. So we finally arrived at the crochet part. I've already made my slip knot, but if you've never crocheted before, then search for our easy peasy slip knot tutorial on our YouTube channel. So the crochet hook goes into the knot and you're pulling those ends apart, not too tight, but just so it fits the crochet hook quite snug. Right, so now you're ready to do your first chain stitch. So your hook goes in front of the yarn over, and you're going to slide that stitch through your slip knot like I'm doing now. And let's do that again. In front of the yarn goes over, and you're going to slide that crochet hook through that stitch. Okay, so keep crocheting until you have 60 chain stitches. And you need to be counting as you go along, and you can also check how many chain stitches you've crocheted by having a look at how many V's. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 chain stitches. So have a look at all those V's. Can you see that's just one side of the V that I'm pointing to now? And you need 60 chain stitches to complete the straight tentacle. Hi, welcome back. So hopefully you've got to the same stage as me and you've got 60 chain stitches now. We're now ready to end and knot off our row. So just cut the yarn, leaving about a 3 to 4 centimetre tail end. Pull your crochet hook out, but at the same time making that stitch large. Take the tail end and just pull that through your loop. Pull tight and knot that. And that's your first tentacle complete, and now you just need to do the same, another row of 60 chain stitches, and you've got 2 tentacles. We're now ready to go on to our curly tentacles. The principle is the same as the straight tentacles, except we're just doing 30 chain stitches to start off with, and now we're going to learn how to do the double crochet. So your double crochet is crocheted into each chain stitch. So each chain stitch is the V. So my needle's pointing to where all these V's are, and that's a chain stitch. So to begin with, your crochet hook is going to go into the first stitch. So where my needle is now, that's your first chain stitch. The crochet hook is going to go into that stitch. You're then going to yarn over, and you're going to take that stitch over your yarn over. And you'll be left with 2 stitches now on your crochet hook. It is a little bit fiddly, but with practice, you'll be able to hold everything. Yarn over again, and then you're going to slide that stitch through the remaining 2 stitches on your crochet hook. So let's repeat that. You're going to go into that stitch, that's your next stitch. Crochet hook goes into that stitch, the top part of that V, yarn over, slide through that stitch, and you're now left with 2 stitches on your hook, yarn over, and you're going to slide through both those stitches together. Let's look at that again. The crochet hook is going to go into that next stitch, yarn over, slide that stitch through, yarn over, slide through 2 chain stitches. So keep going and do those double crochets across the whole length of your chain stitches. So we need 30 double crochets, and you need to really get to where we started, so where my fingers just pointed to. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of my 30 chain stitches doing my double crochet. I'm just doing my last double crochet now. And you can see I've come to where I started. So now what I need to do is another 30 chain stitches. So yarn over, stitch goes through, yarn over, stitch goes through, and carry on until you have another 30 chain stitches completed, and I'll catch up with you then. Hi, hopefully you've caught up with me. We've got 30 chain stitches completed, and we've got one little curly tentacle on our left, all completed too. We now need to do a double crochet into each of our chain stitches. So get your hook, and you're going to go into that first stitch that I'm pointing to now. Hook goes into your stitch, yarn goes over, yarn over, and we go through 2 stitches. So we're going to show you a couple more times. Hook goes into the next chain stitch, yarn over, slide that stitch through, straighten up those stitches, yarn over, and go through 2. And your next double crochet into the stitch, yarn over, slide through that stitch, yarn over, and go through your final 2 stitches. Okay, so you're just going to carry on doing a double crochet into all of these chain stitches until you reach the beginning, and we'll meet you there. Okay, so welcome back. We've now finished 2 tentacles, and you'll notice that they're curling quite nicely. And now let's get started on our 3rd tentacle. So by now you should be feeling really familiar and comfortable with the chain stitching. So we're just going to do 30 chain stitches, and I'll catch you up. See you in a sec, guys. Okay, so by now you've done your 30 chain stitches and you've got 2 cute curled tentacles. We're now going to do our double crochets into our chain stitches to complete our final curled tentacle, and we are on way to finishing our jellyfish. So yarn over, go through that stitch, yarn over, go through 2, and just keep going with those double crochets into that stitch, yarn over, go through that stitch, yarn over, go through 2, into the stitch, yarn goes over, stitch goes over, and keep going until you get to the end, which is, I guess, where you started off at, and I'll catch you up then. So welcome back. I've now got 3 double crochets left to do, so I'll just do it while you guys are watching. You might have already reached the end and just waiting for me to show you the next stage. Just carry on watching and we'll soon move on. Right, that's my last double crochet. And that's really what it should look like. You'll have 3 little curly tentacles. They've just curled naturally. You haven't done anything to them. Now we're ready to tie it all up. So cut your yarn, leaving again about maybe a 5 centimeter tail end. Make that loop big and take your crochet hook out. Bring that tail end through the loop. Pull it tight. And now you want to tie those 2 ends together. So just in the knot. My hands are a little bit in the way, but hopefully you can figure out what I'm doing. It's just a normal knot, nothing fancy. And there we go. A set of cute amigurumi curly tentacles for your jellyfish. This is a really fun part of the jellyfish, it's the jellyfish head. But we start off by learning how to do a magic ring. If you have crocheted before, then this tutorial is going to teach you how to do the standard magic ring. If you're a complete newbie to crochet, then have a look at your handout and have a look at one of our YouTube tutorials called the Easy Peasy Magic Ring, and follow those instructions for a really simple way to do the magic ring. Both results are exactly the same. One is just slightly more complex than the other. So wrap the tail end of your yarn over your hand like I'm doing now. Then take the working end of your yarn and wrap that around your finger to create a cross on the top of your finger. Grab your crochet hook and put it under the first part of the cross and bring that other bit through. And you now want to do a chain stitch with the working yarn. And by working yarn, I mean the end of the yarn that's not the tail end. Okay, so that's your magic circle ready to be crocheted into. I do like to crochet with both parts. You can see I'm holding both the circle and the tail end together. We're now going to do 6 double crochets into the magic ring. So I'm doing one now and I'll talk you through the second. So your crochet hook goes into the ring, yarn over, come through, yarn over, go through 2. Your crochet hook goes into the ring, yarn over, go through, yarn over, go through those 2 stitches again. So the principle is really the same. If it's a double crochet into chain stitches or a double crochet into the ring, it's always the same. You're going into a stitch, yarn over, getting rid of the stitch, yarn over, getting rid of 2 stitches. And you want to keep going until you've got 6 double crochets. If you are a beginner, don't worry, because the Easy Peasy tutorial will talk you through the 6 double crochets as well as the magic ring. Okay, so it's worthwhile always counting your number of double crochets into the ring. Each V is 1 stitch. 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got 6 double crochets there, and now we're going to see why it's a magic ring. Pull that tail end of the yarn and that gap is going to close. It's magic! We now need to get our stitch marker and put it into that last stitch that we did. Definitely tie it. You might think that it's not going to fall off and it will stay put. It really won't. Do secure it by tying that. Okay, so now we're going to do round 2 of the jellyfish head. And the pattern says that we need to do 2 double crochets into each stitch. So let me show you what I mean by that. So each stitch, again, it's the V's. It's the V's on the edge of your circle now that you've crocheted. So my needle has actually just shown you. So your hook goes into that stitch. Can you see I'm going through both parts of that V? Yarn over, go through that stitch, yarn over, go through the final 2. We're going back into that same stitch again. I'll just get my needle to show you. So you're going into that stitch there, the one that we've just been in. So the crochet hook goes in, yarn over, come through, yarn over, go through those final 2 stitches. So that's 2 double crochets in 1 stitch. Let's do that again. Into the next stitch, I'm going through both parts of that V, yarn over, come through that stitch, yarn over, go through those final 2. I'm going back into that same stitch. You can see a nice little hole there, perfect for the crochet hook to go through. So hook goes in, yarn over, bring that stitch through, yarn over and through those final 2. So now you've got to carry on. You've got another 4 double crochets that you've got to go into twice into each stitch. Now when you get to your last stitch, you'll see that there's the stitch marker. So you need to remove the stitch marker, and then you're going to do your 2 double crochets into that stitch. And get your stitch marker, and again you're going to put it into the last stitch, so just grabbing both parts of that V and securing it close. And that's it, you've now completed round 2 of the jellyfish head. Hi, welcome back. We're now doing round 3 of our jellyfish head. So the pattern says that we need to do an increase and then a double crochet. This means 2 double crochets into the first stitch, and 1 double crochet into the second stitch. So where my needle's going into now. 2 into that stitch, 1 into the next stitch, and just keep going until you get to the end of your round. What I like to do first before I start any round is just quickly count to make sure that I have the right number of stitches. So I need to have 12 stitches before I start. Okay, so your hook's going to go into that stitch and you're going to do 1 double crochet. And by now hopefully you're quite familiar with the double crochets, and you're going back into the same stitch for another double crochet. Into the next stitch for 1 double crochet only. And the next stitch for 2 double crochets. One double crochet, okay, so keep going. So it's an increase of 2 double crochets and then a double crochet until you get to that little safety pin stitch marker. Okay, so now we've come to round 4, and round 4 says that we need to do 2 double crochets. So that's 1 double crochet in there, 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 in that third stitch. 1, 2. So 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, 1, 2. And that's really the pattern for the next round. So I'm just going to set you off. So you're going to do 1 double crochet in that first stitch. Your second double crochet. And now 2 double crochets into that third stitch, 1, 2. So go into that stitch, going through both parts of the V, And now let's go back into that stitch again. Great. Okay, so now we're going to repeat that set. We're going to go 1, 1, 1, 2 double crochets into that stitch. So I'll be doing this with you, and I'll leave you to do the last set by yourself. 1, and that's my second stitch. And now I'll be doing my 2 double crochets into the same stitch. Okay, so have a go at finishing that last set by yourself. So that's 1, 1, and then 1, 2 stitches into that last stitch. Okay, so we just have a few more stitches to do to complete our round. So that's 2 double crochets into that stitch. And 1 double crochet into that last stitch. So I'm just going to take my little stitch marker out, crochet into that stitch, and we'll just put the stitch marker back in. So I'm just exaggerating it a little bit so that you can see how to do it, but normally I would just keep my crochet hook and my stitch as normal. Wonderful, so now we've completed our round. So just before you carry on, just check that you've got 18 stitches by just counting all those V's around the edge of your head so far. Hi, we're really getting there. We're now ready to do round 5 of our jellyfish head. So the pattern says an increase, so that's 2 double crochets into that first stitch, then 3 double crochets, which is 1 double crochet into there, 2, 3. An increase, 2 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So I'm just going to do the first set, so an increase and then 3 double crochets, and you can just follow. And another double crochet into that same stitch. And then 1, 2, 3. So all double crochets, 1 stitch into each stitch. Great, so I'm going to leave you to keep going until you get to your stitch marker. So it's 1, 2, increase, and then 1, 2, 3 double crochets, an increase, and then 1, 2, 3 double crochets. So when you get to the end of your stitch marker, I'll see you again. Okay, so now we just have 1 double crochet left to do, the last stitch of our round. Take your stitch marker out and complete that stitch. Okay, and put that stitch marker back in. Remember to secure it because it really can fall out. So now what you want to do is you want to check that you have 30 stitches. So count all those little V's, making sure that there's 30 of them. The next part now, around 6 to 10, is really going to be what makes our head form a little bowl almost. So you can see here this another jellyfish head in blue, but that's really what it's going to end up looking like. I'm sorry, it's slightly off camera. There we go. So that's going to be the next stage. Okay, so round 6 to 10 is really easy. It's just a double crochet into each of these stitches. So each of those V's. So I'm just going to do the first one for you, yarn over, go through that stitch, yarn over, go through 2, and you're going to keep going. So keep going until you've completed 5 rounds. I really recommend that maybe you just have some sort of tally on a sheet of paper next to you, just to tick it off as you go along. So I'm going to catch up with you at the end. Great, well congratulations on getting this far. Our jellyfish head is almost complete. So I've cut my yarn, leaving an 8-inch 20cm tail end. We're going to take our stitch marker out and pull your crochet hook up towards the ceiling to get a large loop. And now you're just going to thread that tail end through, pull it tight to knot it. Great, now this is the yarn, this tail end that we're actually going to sew with. So just keep that aside and we'll come back to it soon. Okay, so I've already crocheted the base and I'm not talking you through it on the video because it's exactly the same principle as the head, rounds 1 to 5. So let's just tie off that base and just pull that yarn through that stitch and pull it tight. So that's your base now complete, so the base of the jellyfish head. And there's the jellyfish. So we're ready to move on to the eyes next. So just have a look and see where you'd like to position them. All right, this is a really cute and fun part. So now we're going to attach our little amigurumi eyes to our jellyfish head. So I'm literally just slotting it in wherever you want them to go. And now you're going to turn the head inside out so that you can attach the washers. Now mine may look different to what you were given, but don't worry because it all follows the same principle. You're just going to force that washer down over the eye. It can be difficult, but just persevere with it. Okay, and then just fold it all back. And that's your jellyfish head completed. Right, well the next stage will be sewing, so I'll see you soon. Okay, so now we're going to sew the jellyfish together. So I'm going to start off with my 2 tentacles. I'm using a blue yarn just so that you can see where I'm sewing, but obviously you'll be using the same colour yarn as your jellyfish. So take your 2 tentacles and just cross them over. And just sew it through. So you just want to have 1 stitch just sewing them together. Now you're going to see me make a knot in a second, and this is because I forgot to tie my knot. Obviously you must tie your knot beforehand. So really it's just 1 simple stitch. So now you're going to take your base, that's the right side, and that's the wrong side. So the side with the tail end, that's the wrong side of your base. We want to sew it onto the right side. So turn it over and you're going to sew your straight tentacles to the right side. And you just want to be using some really simple stitching. Don't worry because you're going to be using the same colour yarn, so I really want to stress that it doesn't have to be super neat or precise or accurate. You just want to sew those tentacles onto the base. That blue tail end that you can see at the end, you can either just weave it into your crochet or you could just tuck it in, but try not to cut it too close to the knot in case it unravels. Okay, so now we're going to take our curly tentacles and we're going to sew those onto the base as well. And if you haven't already done so, then just make sure that the 2 ends are tied into a knot, and I've just cut my tail ends short, leaving about probably just 1 centimetre. So I like to place my curly tentacles where the straight tentacles aren't, so just so that you've got something going on in each space. And you're just going to sew those tentacles to the base in exactly the same way as you sewed on the straight tentacles. Simple stitches, and I make sure that there's 1 stitch in each part of the tentacle. Okay, so turn that over and now we're just going to knot off. So the way that I do that is I just put my needle through one of the stitches that I've done, pull the yarn through but not all the way, and then just put my needle through that stitch and pull tight. Cut your yarn, and that's your base complete. We're now ready to sew our base to the head. So you want to align the base to the head by aligning those V stitches. I like to start at the back where I've got my tail end hanging and just try to align them so that the V's are under each other. You're going to be using your tail end yarn. I'm going to use this blue yarn again just so that you can see what I'm doing. And you really want to be sewing through each of those V's. So you want to be going through that V and then right above it through the other V. So you want to be going through both stitches right on top of each other. You'll then do the same on the next 2 stitches and so forth. So I'm just going to be showing you the first few. And now I'm going to go into the V right above it. Again, don't worry if it's not neat or if you go through the wrong V, as long as you're going through the V's. I guess that's what's important. And now you're going to go through the next V and the V underneath it. So I just want to show you the stitch. Can you see that small blue stitch? Yours will obviously be the same colour as your yarn, so it's going to barely show. And the next stitch and above it. So you want to carry on doing this until you get probably about an inch where you started, because you do need to leave a gap to stuff your jellyfish. So keep going and I'll catch you guys up. Right, so hopefully you've caught up with me now. I've just redone my stitching in the same colour yarn as the jellyfish, so you can see how invisible it is. So you've got your gap, you just need to get your stuffing and just start filling the jellyfish with your stuffing. It's quite simple, and when it gets a little bit hard or if you're struggling, you can just grab your crochet hook just to get those final bits in. Okay, and you just want to then align those stitches again, and you're just going to continue to sew in exactly the same way as you were doing before, so in and out of those V's. So I just wanted to show you how I'm going to end it off. If your stuffing is coming out, just use your needle just to poke that back in, and then just again carry on sewing through those V's until you get to the very final gap. Okay, and so now for my last stitch to knot off, I'm just going to go through any part of the base. So I'm just picking up any part like that. Pull the yarn through, but not all the way through. You want to just leave that little loop. Pull your yarn through that loop and pull it tight. Now don't cut off your tail end quite yet. Put it through the base and all the way through the top of the head of the jellyfish. Pull that quite tight, and then you're just going to snip off that yarn. And that's it, congratulations. You've now finished your little cute amigurumi jellyfish.